Plastic escapes and degrades into our homes, soil, food, and water, ultimately infiltrating the human body and is likely a factor in the mass increase in infertility, birth defects, neurodevelopment disorders, young adult cancer, heart attack, stroke, and dementia. We need the right innovation, investment, policy, and research into solutions, and we need them now. We know there is plastic in our oceans, land, soil, many processed food, and most soda, water, and other beverages, and kid food products. It's in our drinking water, and it's in our homes and toys and our vehicles that release toxic chemicals in warm temperatures. And it's throughout our bodies in our arteries, blood, organs, tissues and cells, and even our brain. An unborn child in every country. It's out of control. Plastic is accelerating climate breakdown. It's interfering with the webs that cycle and sequester carbon and enable life on Earth. Current recycling solutions for petroplastics are fairy tales told to us to lull us into a false sense of hope. Litter picks are important and help to raise awareness, and larger-scale cleanups are expensive and can't solve the problem. All the while, we're constantly mass-producing more and more plastic. It's like trying to stop a bath from overflowing by using a teaspoon when the taps are fully turned on. Our homes are often full of plastic. Retail stores are full of plastic. Online marketplaces sell mostly plastic toys, and grocery stores are full of plastic. If we can afford it, we can eat organic food and filter our water, but we feel in our hearts that this isn't enough, and we know that this crisis is on a global scale and it's worsening very quickly. The longer plastics are used, the more they degrade and the more they shed dangerous toxins. It's especially high risk to reuse plastics for food contact. Recycling often sounds like it could solve the crisis. The theory is that used plastic is made back into new plastic, and so it will go round and round continuously, without creating waste or pollution. This is called circularity. The problem is that plastic simply cannot achieve circularity in practice. Whenever plastic is recycled, it is always downgraded to a lower quality. It is usually used for a lower grade product. After this, it's usually not recycled again. We put single quotation marks around recycling because we don't believe this should be called recycling. We think this should be called downcycling. Downcycling is not circular. It always ends in waste. And because plastic can only be downcycled, as soon as plastic is made, all plastic is doomed to become toxic waste over time. It becomes toxic pollution in our environment and ourselves. Recycling only delays plastic from becoming waste or pollution. Recent scientific analysis has shown that recycling causes direct pollution, often in the form of microparticles that is between 6 to 13% of the input plastic, and equates to several million tons of toxic micropollution that comes directly from recycling. The industry claims that this is not true, that plastics are becoming more circular. But what does more circular mean? Things either go round and round or they don't. And so the suggestion that plastics are becoming circular is a complete myth. The plastic industry says at least bottle recycling is circular, but because the plastic degrades every time it's recycled, the old plastic must be continuously mixed with new plastic to keep the quality high enough. This means that the plastic only stays in the bottle economy for a few cycles before it is siphoned off. The plastic industry calls this circular. The plastic industry makes 100% recycled bottles and thus gives the impression of 100% circularity. But what they don't say is that they can't make 100% recycled bottles back into 100% recycled bottles continuously. The plastic from these 100% recycled bottles will soon be downcycled into other products which will end as toxic waste. This is misleading, not circular, and not sustainable. They represent the absolute best practice and the pinnacle of recycling excellence. Like a magician controlling their audience, this is where the industry wants us to look. But bottles are only a tiny fraction of total plastics, and as we've shown, even they soon become toxic waste or pollution. For many decades, the industry has promised new kinds of recycling that will, in theory, break plastics down and then rebuild them as new, high-quality plastic. However, none of these processes have been made to work at scale without creating large flows of toxic waste and masses of pollution. Sometimes the processes create relatively small amounts of very toxic oil, which is later burnt for energy. They say advanced recycling will be perfected in just a few years. They have been saying this since the 1980s, And like tomorrow, advanced recycling never arrives. And all the while, the industry has been exponentially increasing production, justified by the promise of recycling to come. Any activities which seek to increase so-called recycling of plastics are destructive. They lead to toxic waste and pollution. Any money spent on plastic recycling infrastructure is just adding momentum to a destructive, dead-end, curvilinear technology. So far, we have only considered plastics that can be collected, sorted, separated, and decontaminated. However, millions upon millions of tons of plastics don't fall into these categories. Recycling can't do anything about them. Trillions of degraded tread particulate from vehicle tires, fibers from clothes, adhesives made from plastic, strimmer cord lubricants, protective coatings, wood plastic composites, glass reinforced plastic GRP thermoset computer plastics, plastics used and mixed with other plastics or materials. The list of plastic that cannot be recycled is endless. Plastic is only cheap if you don't count the massive cost of their destruction of nature, their huge contribution to climate breakdown, the cost of trying to clean up their toxic legacy, their insidious health costs, their social costs, including premature death, terrible suffering, and loss of productivity. Estimates say the true cost of plastic is around 10 times the sale price. Plastics are lightweight, but there are alternatives that are also lightweight, and there are systems that don't rely on low weight. Plastics are good at preserving food, but the plastic leaches into the food, then into our bodies. There are alternative non-toxic systems and materials that can preserve food. Plastics are low energy to recycle, but there are alternative materials that are not only low energy to recycle, but can be cycled continuously without creating toxic waste and pollution. Throughout the world, these dirty, high-risk, and ultimately polluting operations are carried out in poorer communities by the most vulnerable, most poorly represented people. Tear Fund estimates that up to 1 million people die each year in developing countries because of diseases related to plastic and other mismanaged waste. Recycling is promoted by the industry to sanitize their products and ensure unrestricted growth. While we pay up to 10 times the price of the product in polluted soil, contaminated water, toxic air, and astronomical costs to human health, top executives have known this for decades, as revealed in this note written by Erwin Levowitz from Exxon, who states that the company is committed to the activities of recycling but not the results. Companies constantly stir up big headlines about future recycling targets, but always back down quietly as the deadline approaches, then highly publicize new targets that they know they will never have to fulfill. This way, they always sound as if they are working to find solutions to the plastic crisis. Plastic is everywhere. It's highly toxic when degraded. We can't clean it up, we can't avoid it, and recycling and reusing it makes the problem worse. We urgently need fundamental system change. Transition to truly circular materials and systems, powered by low carbon or renewable energy, is a true pathway towards ongoing economic stability, which can provide prosperity for everyone. This must be carried out with urgency, but great care to avoid unintended consequences. Ongoing global reductions in manufacturing of primary synthetic plastics is an essential prerequisite for system change. If plastics are not available, people and businesses will soon find alternative materials and systems. However, it is essential that this is stewarded by scientific and ethical research to ensure that replacement systems are sustainable. Though a fraction of plastics may be essential, current synthetic plastics can only play a very minor role in a sustainable future. Of course, it's going to be challenging, but we, the people, our organizations, and the officials we elect must be focused on the toxic, health, and environmental crisis caused by synthetic plastics. We must take great care only to develop alternative materials, which are essential parts of whole systems, which are comprehensively nature-friendly and freely available to developing nations. This will involve difficult choices and may mean less unnecessary stuff, but if we are to survive, we have no choice but to find ways to follow this pathway. We urgently need internationally harmonized, legally binding definitions of circularity and recycling, which forbids the use of the word recycling to describe actions which lead to waste. Remember, this is all we can do with current synthetic plastics. Legal definitions of true circularity and recycling would be beacons of truth in a stormy sea of misinformation and greenwashing, guiding society towards everlasting sustainability and prosperity. True circularity will lead to a new era of renewed and ongoing health and vitality, with abundant opportunities and prosperity for everyone, including safe, clean environments, clean, healthy jobs, healthier humans, and food, water, air, and brains without plastic. We need laws to curb plastic production, which is increasing exponentially. For this, we will need accurate definitions for plastics. We need laws which urgently outlaw toxic additives to plastics and regulate what can be used. Currently, we rely on voluntary conduct, and it's not working. We need binding precautionary policy because most policy is now voluntary and not policed. We must invest in relevant research and alternative systems and the necessary infrastructure. If we transition to true circularity, suddenly there will be no waste. We won't need landfill or incineration or to export our plastic trash. Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and Nestle used 138 million metric tons, with up to 58% of their plastic leaking into the environment between 2000 to 2023. This pollution imposes up to $19 billion per year in externalized costs to countries. If unchanged, these companies could cause up to 399 million tons of plastic pollution by 2050. We need to fund urgent research paid for by big oil and gas to find ways to safely and effectively remove plastics from people and from natural ecosystems. We must prioritize protection of human and planetary health above commercial interests. After so many decades, it is time to stand up to big plastic. Modern humans have lived on Earth for around 300,000 years, all this time relying on the continuous natural recycling of nutrients and essentials such as water and carbon that is the building block of life. If we are to go on for another 300,000 years, or even another 30 years, we have no choice but to transition quickly to nature-friendly, truly circular systems. And current plastics can only play a very minor role in this transition.